is a country having numerous forts. Many of them have been in existence for a while now, and have played a very important role in shaping the history of the country. This incident happened in the early 90s when I was in college. It was December and exams were just over. We had a couple of weeks to go before the start of the new term. 4 of us, namely I, Peru, Nikel, and Canoe, decided to go for an overnight trek to one of the old deserted forts to unwind, relax, and enjoy nature in general. We had heard some stories of the fort being haunted, but nevertheless decided to carry on just for the experience. This fort is situated around 150 kilometers from Mumbai and is around 1,400 meters above sea level. It is a 6-hour trek to the fort. We started at around 7 a.m. in the morning and were fully geared up to spend the night on the fort. Nikel had brought a gas stove and other food items required for cooking. We had even planned a barbecue later that night. The weather was very pleasant, and the cool breeze really refreshed us and made the trek less tiring. We reached the gates of the fort at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon. There were a couple of other trekkers like us on the fort. They were very friendly, and we soon began chatting. They told us that they had trekked to the fort a couple of times before, but always left before sundown. When we told them of our plans to stay there overnight, they looked concerned and told us about reports of spirits and hauntings, which were reported earlier. When they found that we were determined to spend the night there, one of them insisted that we stay at the temple located at the entrance of the fort, which was considered safe by locals. The scenery from the fort was breathtaking, and Peru, along with Nikel, had a great time photographing nature at its best. After a great lunch, we rested for some time and began looking around. The fort was huge, with a lot of items of historical significance. We also located a pond, which would fulfill our requirements for water, required for drinking and cooking. It was 6 p.m. and the sun had nearly set. Our trekker friends had left an hour back, wishing us the best of luck. We had already kept our stuff near the temple, where we could cook and spend the night after dinner. My friends suddenly had this crazy idea of going to the pond and enjoying a nice swim. Though I am a good swimmer, I was apprehensive since it was getting dark and the waters were unknown. The element of risk involved prevented me from joining them, and I sat outside, enviously watching them splashing around. This is when something strange happened. Canoe felt something grasp his leg and pull him into the water. He immediately shrugged himself free and looked a bit shaken. Though concerned, we tried to convince him that his foot might have gotten entangled in the weeds in the water. I asked everyone to come out immediately so that we could head back and start preparations for dinner. While walking towards our camp, Canoe told us that he was suddenly feeling very cold and started shivering. All of us were surprised to see this since Canoe is a robust guy who seldom falls ill. We quickly prepared a bed for him inside the temple, covered him with a blanket to keep him warm, and gave him some medicine. Canoe was delirious for some time, talking gibberish, but soon fell asleep. We then started preparations for our dinner. The plans for a barbecue were canceled, and we decided to have a simple dinner consisting of rice and lentils and hit the sack. By around 10 p.m., we finished our dinner, which tasted so good since we were all really famished after our long, hard day. The 3 of us sat down, chatting by the temple, and the topic soon drifted to the hauntings which were reported earlier. Nikel is a complete non-believer in ghosts and scoffed at the reports. He also told us that he could go to the pond right away, enjoy a smoke, and spend half an hour there without any fear. Despite my pleas, he left us, promising to return in exactly half an hour. Peru and I were concerned about the whole thing, but couldn't help it. We started chatting about the breathtaking scenery from the fort and forgot about Nikel. Time passed quickly, and when I glanced at my watch, it was 11 already. It was around an hour since Nikel had left, and we hadn't heard from him. Irritated at his irresponsible behavior and being concerned about his well-being at the time, we immediately set about to find him. As we neared the pond, we saw Nikel lying near the water. From a distance, it looked as if he had dozed off. When we came near, I glanced at his face. Believe me, what I saw next still sends a shiver down my spine. He was lying on his back with his eyes open, as if in a trance, staring straight at the sky. Fearing the worst, we shook him vigorously to try and get him out of his stupor. Fortunately for us, he awoke and seemed fine. He started sweating profusely and told us what exactly had happened. After leaving the temple, he came to the pond and was enjoying his smoke. He suddenly got the feeling that he wasn't alone. He saw something move in the bushes. He brushed aside his fear, saying to himself that it might be a stray dog who had made the fort his home. It also came to his mind that Peru and I might be playing a prank on him. He ignored the movement and continued smoking. He suddenly felt an icy cold hand on his neck. He swung back instantly and saw that it was a woman dressed in a red dress, horribly disfigured, unkempt hair swaying across her face and a creepy smile on her face looking straight at him. He had no recollection of what happened later until the time we woke him. There was an outline of 3 fingers clearly visible on Nikel's neck where the cold hand touched him. Without wasting any more time, we ran to the temple. We were relieved to see Canoe sleeping soundly. My watch showed the time as 12:30 a.m., a half an hour past midnight. We entered the temple and closed the door securely from inside. All of us were visibly disturbed after what had happened. Out of sheer exhaustion, we were about to fall off to sleep when we suddenly heard a knock on the door. We did not have the courage to open the door, but the knocking still persisted, slowly at first and becoming more and more vigorous later on. Someone was banging on the doors and windows of the temple. We heard a woman's voice abusing us and daring us to come outside. Nikel slowly opened the window in an attempt to see who it was. There was no one to be seen, but we could clearly hear the woman's voice abusing us. After around 20 minutes, the banging stopped. Just when we felt that the worst was over, it started all over again. This time, the banging and abuses continued with increased intensity for around 45 minutes before it finally ceased. All of us had become nervous wrecks. It seemed that the only thing which was preventing the evil entity outside from coming in was the presence of the deity inside the temple. None of us could sleep. All of us sat around the deity and prayed hard in such a way that we had never done before. Getting out of the fort safely was the only thing going through our minds at that time. Then, at around 6 a.m. in the morning, there was a knock on the door. This time, it was a man's voice asking us to open the door. Gradually mustering up courage, I opened the window and was relieved to find that it was the temple priest who had come there before to perform his religious duties. He was surprised to find us there since no one generally stayed in the fort after sundown. We related our account to him, and he confirmed that a few others too had similar experiences during their stay. He told us that he had been coming to the fort since he was a child, but personally did not experience anything weird inside the fort. Since the start of our ordeal, Canoe was the only person who was sleeping comfortably inside the temple and did not wake up even once. In fact, when we woke him in the morning, he was feeling fit and fine, unlike the previous day. He had absolutely no recollection of our ordeal inside the temple. We quickly packed our stuff and immediately started back. Nikel was lucky to have escaped unhurt. This incident left a deep mark on him and completely changed his perspective of looking at paranormal occurrences. He recovered soon, and the marks on his neck vanished within a week. Canoe still doesn't remember anything from the time we came out of the pond until the next day. Peru and I still meet up occasionally and sometimes discuss as to what might have happened if we had opened the door of the temple that night.